This video wants to be just an explanation of how I implement audio in a game engine. Please don't care about the sound design because it passed a lot of time from the time I made this project.
Hello everyone, I'm Filippo and I made this video to demonstrate how I implemented sound design and music I created for this indie multiplayer video game Never Finished, called Dumb and Drunk and developed by some students from Polytechnic of Milan. I'm sorry in advance for my English, I'm trying to do my best, but you know, I'm Italian and I prefer spend my time eating pizza rather than open a book. Obviously, I'm joking. However, the concept of the game is very crazy. Two drunk roommates compete after a savage night to regain the house keys, and the first one who can get them will win the only one bet at home. After creating the music and the effects, I implemented them into Wwise, and then I put the Wwise project into the Unity project folder together with the Wwise Unity integration plugin, both for Mac and Windows platforms. In the New York scene, in the Unity hierarchy on the left, I click on Wwise Global that opens in the inspector window on the right of the project, a sort of main page for Wwise Unity objects. It's like a top level of the Wwise audio implementation tree, if you want to call it so. Here I manage general things for the project like sound banks, states, and what I want that plays at the start of the game. There is an AK initializer script that's created automatically when I put the Wwise Unity integration plugin into the project folder, and it allows the connections between the two programs themselves. I choose to create two different sound banks, one for the aspects called main and one for the music in Wwise, in order to have a more organized project and to manage more properly for the debugging these two different audio sets. Therefore, I set up the load on object in AK bank as awake because I wanted to initialize when I open the Unity project. Then I created an event for the music with the property start that's triggered on at the beginning of the game when the two players get ready and choose the level difficulty. Moreover, I created an AK state object that matches the state objects in Wwise. They are 4 and they are very important because they control when music will change during the game. There is the end state that indicates when it is the end of the level, and there is the play state that indicates that you are into the level, and there is a start menu state that starts when I open the pause menu during the gameplay. At the end there is also the no one state that was very useful for me in the Wwise project for switching from a state to another one. So now let's play some music. Click the play button on the top of the project. And finally, there is also an event for the sound of the clock. This is more interesting because there is a timing for completing the level, and when this countdown is going to end, there is a game parameter called time that's matched with an RTPC in Wwise, and it controls the volume of the sound of this clock. So when the time is up, we will hear this tick, 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 tick very clearly. I will introduce to you some very basic lines of script that I insert in the functions of the program. So I recall the class AKSoundEngine that contains some functions from Wwise converted in C#, the languages of a Unity program, and I set the RTPC value called time, and I set up a maximum time value that's tied up to a game object. And when this max time value reach the 0 point or a value less than 0, the game will be over. And so the state will change into a game state like end of the game. And for example, the music will change and it will appear on the screen a graphic like you lose. So I can go on showing you some other main things I've implemented. I shall not show you every object because some are very similar to each other. For example, I've decided to create only one event triggered when the player collides with a pickup. Please note the AK trigger collision enter in the trigger on object. But to diversify the sound of the different pickup, I divided them in some switch grouping wise. Now I can recall these wise switch objects with an AK switch object, setting up at the start of the level. And then I created two AK trigger collision enter objects for the player 1 and the player 2 because we wanted that only our players could trigger the sounds of this collider, like the keys for example, or for the other pickups. Another interesting thing to show is the AK activate on distance for the event of the granny voice. There is an old woman at the end of the street that makes noises from the beginning of the game and she starts coughing, for example. But we will hear her voice only when approaching her, because at the start of the level we will be very distant from her. And in the WISE project there is an obstacle attenuation curve that controls the volume of this random container, so we will not hear her at the beginning of the game. So we will keep in mind that the point of view of the listener hears is tied up to the main camera. So in the AK activate on distance object, we have to set up the main camera as the listener. Thanks for watching this video. I hope I've been clear enough in this explanation, and I hope I've been a little help for who wants to start to study this exciting art. And I want to leave you with a sound that has been a very important part of my youth with my friends.